by certain goals, needs, knowledge, feeling. Like other forms of religious art, music represents a field where current problems and social processes are represented in different ways and according to the historical era. Music is a socio-cultural category that can be seen as a form of communication. It cannot be treated only as a sound, separated from the social, cultural, economical context where it was created and listened to. Culture and art, and in this respect the Byzantine church music, I view not as a static, unchanging object, but as a process undergoing transformation diachronically. In this paper, I treat the Byzantine music as a field for ethnological and anthropological research, pointing to possible methodological approaches and interpretations. So far, this music was mainly the object of study by performers, chanters, musicologists, music historians, etc., from Greece and abroad. In order to better study, it is necessary to A. define the object of a study, and B. find an appropriate translation of terms of Byzantine music from Greek to English. The question is, what do we mean by the term Byzantine music today, and whether this term and its contents changed diachronically. This music was created and developed in the Eastern Roman Empire, and its creators and listeners did not know that they are making Byzantine music. Besides, with the spreading of Christianity in the early ages, this music spread beyond the borders of the empire. It found fertile ground in the neighboring countries, such as, for example, Romania or medieval Serbia, which is confirmed by composers of Kir Stefan the Serbian, Isaiah the Serbian, Nikola the Serbian, etc. Music that emerged in the aftermath of the Constantinople fall within Ottoman Empire was named post-Byzantine. The most important composers who did not know they belonged to the post-Byzantine period created music at that time. In addition, Byzantine music represents excellent food for thought, which we will discuss later. Anthropology is the most general science about the human race in a diachronic perspective. It studies the ways people live, experience and interpret their practice and its effects. It is an interpretative science whose key problem is the meaning, interpretation, symbols, rather than the phenomenon itself. Relying on a hermeneutical approach, it studies how people understand and interpret the world, what meanings they give to the objects they use, and how they formulate and interpret them. In this sense, one possible ethnological and anthropological approach to Byzantine music is the interpretation of its meaning on different levels: social, cultural, symbolical, etc. Byzantine music can be analyzed on many levels, such as studying of authors, listeners, notation symbols, place of creation, etc. Methodology of the scientific approach in ethnology and socio-cultural anthropology includes planning research, field research itself, archival work, media analysis, and repeated or controlled studies. The first phase of the study implies identification of the topics and formulation of the problem and the subject of investigation. Field research involves material collection. Methodological procedures in ethnology and anthropology include observation with participation, biographical method, and structured interview, and also frequent conversation. After compilation of the research, analysis of contextualization of collected material follow. The researcher is expected to choose an appropriate approach for the analysis, whether it is functional analysis, theory of structural or cognitive anthropology, semiotics, etc. So far, Byzantine church music was rarely seen as a ground for ethnological and anthropological research in Serbia. As a performer, I had an opportunity to observe the situation from the inside. Nature of Byzantine music is two-sided. On one hand, it is written, on the other, it is based on oral tradition, so it is certainly an interesting topic for anthropological research. Oral tradition had a crucial share in the development of Byzantine music. Chanting experience gained in oral tradition and strong teacher-student bond were necessary for reading new systems. Byzantine musical system is represented by the set of characters with their multi-layered meaning. So we can use knowledge from the fields of cognitive anthropology, semiotics, and functional analysis. Theoretical school of cognitive anthropology examines how people understand the world around them based on their cultural system. People in different cultures can understand the same phenomenon differently depending on their cultural system. Cognitive anthropology reveals a classification system that is unique to each individual culture. People in different cultures perceive and classify sensory perceptions, colors, sounds in a different way. Experience of the intervals as pleasant and unpleasant can also be culturally caused. It is necessary to take into account the knowledge of the structural anthropology, which assumes that cultural patterns are based on the human mind. The aim of the structuralism is to reveal the internal principles within human mind for every cultural feature and custom. Structuralism attempts to devise a systematic method to discover hidden structures of the culture. Byzantine church music can be viewed in function of various identity practices: religious, gender, music, national. Relationship between national and religious identity is especially important for the research. There is an interesting cultural phenomenon. Some Greek chanters and even musicologists consider Byzantine church music exclusively Greek, cancelling its ecumenical nature of the Orthodox music that should be above the nation. On the other hand, in some other local churches, part of the clergy sees it as something Greek, which means foreign, and for that reason less desirable. I studied this phenomenon on the territory of Belgrade Karlovac Metropolitan, and the paper was published under the title About Reception of Church Byzantine Music in Belgrade in the late 20th and early 21st century, or how Stevan Mokranjac became older and more Serbian composer than Stefan the Serbian. It is necessary to investigate a relationship between the sexual, gender, identity, and this kind of music. In fact, there is a large difference in active participation in the church services between male and female chanters in local practices in Greece. This difference is even greater when we compare situation in Greece with that in the other local Orthodox churches, for example, in Serbia. It is important to point out the relationship between the music and the place as a kind of a cultural process. Meanings that shape the identities of both music and place develop from here. In this case, there are so-called Constantinople school of chanting, Thessaloniki, Mount Athos, Volos, etc. These are the schools, actually singing styles, that are labeled by a certain locality. Places represent materialization and kind of a symbol of social relationships. Local authenticity of the music comes from the interaction with the local audience as well as the environment. It is necessary to apply a comparative method in terms of different social and cultural settings in order to perceive the role of Byzantine church music in the intercultural dialogue. It is necessary to investigate function and meaning of Byzantine church music in practices of different local Orthodox churches. One possible avenue of the research is to analyze the narratives about the Byzantine music by its participants and listeners, lovers, and those who do not favor it. Byzantine music can be a symbol and an inspiration for musical creativity in different genres. I dedicated 2 papers to this phenomenon, like Byzantium as a symbol and inspiration for the contemporary musical creativity in Serbia at the end of the 2nd and the beginning of the 3rd millennium. This research in Serbia showed that during the 20th and at the beginning of the 21st century, Byzantine music has been an inspiration for a wide range of Serbian musical creators of various genres. For these authors, Byzantine music is pan-orthodox, supranatural, national, so they perceive themselves as a part of the Byzantine cultural circle. Each of these authors has his or her personal Byzantium. Aesthetical reasons and the thirst for life motivate this search for Byzantium. Visual material from the church services, concerts, rehearsals, etc., obtained during field research can also be used in the study. In addition, it is possible to use material independent of the study, but it is necessary to check its validity. One possible field of research is the study of a change in musical creativity, recording compositions, performings, etc., whether or not it exists and to what extent. If not, why? It is possible that the change exists, but its participants want to believe the opposite. What are the reasons for such a situation? From the foregoing, it can be concluded that it is very important to analyze the Byzantine music from many aspects: musicological, ethnological, anthropological, sociological, geographical, etc., to understand better the culture in which we live and act. Thank you. Σας ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ. Και θα ήθελα να σας παρακαλέσω κάτι, γιατί μία ανθρωπολόγος, εθνολόγος πάντα είναι σε επιτόπια έρευνα. Έχω εδώ ένα ερωτηματολόγιο, το οποίο μετά θα σας χαρίσω και όποιοι θέλουν μπορούν να το συμπληρώσουν. I said that one anthropologist is always on the field research, so I have one interview here, and if you want, you can write some answers completed. Yeah.